We've got some
Hey,
fresh new
I'm
young
Luis.
talent
And
doing some
I'm
things that I
Luis.
know you haven't
And you're
heard
listening to the
before.
Content is Profit podcast. Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Content is Profit. Fonzie, how you doing today?
Good.
Just good?
I'm doing good.
Say amazing.
I'm doing good. I'm ready to talk.
Okay, I got a text from our dear cousin that we've been telling him to launch a podcast for how long? A couple of years now.
Give more context. What is he doing?
I'm talking to you.
Why a podcast for him?
Well, originally, he is an actor. He's been in a few shows. He's been on commercials. He produced his own short films, incredible. And the reason we decided to recommend a podcast was so he could connect with more people in the industry, more directors, more casting directors, people of influence, and connect, build a relationship with them, and hopefully land some new parts through those relationships, right? Because obviously we've seen the podcast as a way to do that, and it's helped us, move our business forward the last few years. And now he's into a new stage. He's been helping a lot of people with like his fitness. Obviously he eats very healthy. He exercises, and he's been helping a few people, and he wants to explore that route too. And now he's coming back to the idea of a podcast. So he sent me a text, be like, "Hey Luis," this was like Friday, 7 p.m. How do I turn this like horizontal video into vertical video? I'm working on my podcast, on my personal brand, in my social media. And at the time I was in an event with my kids, and I was like, send me a list of all your questions and we'll answer them in a video. So Victor, here is us answering that. But with the preface of, as we're walking out, Fonzie, you mentioned a couple of elements, right, that we should be looking at before we even look at options to how to transform long form horizontal video into maybe vertical clips. That might be a little bit more important than just the technical aspect of doing that, right? Mm-hmm. Which are?
Wait, sorry. Actually, I got a really good idea, and I'm writing it down here.
Okay. So here, while Fonzie writes his idea, right, obviously we see.
I talk a lot about documenting and like catching your ideas at the moment when they happen. And I don't know if you noticed, but I was like looking into nothingness, and the ideas was forming in my head. So I wrote it down in here.
So clearly, Fonzie does not pay attention to what I'm saying.
Keep going. I'm back in the conversation.
Okay. So obviously, in modern media, right, and if you haven't listened to the previous episode, go listen to it, because we talk about the political campaigns and how they're using long form and podcast episodes to, help gain some audience. But obviously we see long form episodes, we see short form, vertical video, talking heads, all these influencers teaching, entertaining, like all these things. And as a consumer, we might be excited to try something like that, right? Or mimic a format or model, or even copy sometimes. And we have a great episode on, why you should not be copying content. And Fonzie goes on a big rant on that episode, which I love. I love how you get passionate sometimes.
For sure.
Anyways,
sometimes
I ramble. But sometimes when we sit down to the actual work of getting the content done out properly, it might seem very intimidating, right? And that's why we see a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners, or even creators, right? That they start something and then they cannot stay consistent. And we raise our hand. That was us for many years, right? We've helped people that have been in that train for quite a while as well. So that's the premise, right? It's like, okay, what are the things that we should be looking at even before trying to, edit the video the right way? I'm doing air quotations as we move forward. Bro, stop kicking the lights. Why are you kicking the lights?
I'm moving it, bro. I'm helping you. We need to, we already talked about it. We're going to do a lighting workshop out here.
Sure.
But what are the things we need to look even before we get started? Is that what you meant? What you said?
Yeah.
Well, a few things come to mind, Red. Maybe the things I wished I would have known before we got started was first kind of like resource management, right? And also tuning out some of the noise, because there's a lot of advice out there. And honestly, I'm not saying it's bad advice, but it might just not be relatable to where you are at the moment, right? Everybody's different in terms of how much time they have, how much money they got to invest in a certain task, how their skill set that they have, right? All these different things. So first, I would look into what are the resources that I can, put into a specific task or a specific project. So if I want to launch a podcast, I would potentially start with getting account of what is the time that I have available to create this piece of content, right? And then I would go through the production process and say, okay, well, producing one episode is taking me X amount of hours, right? Do I count with those amount of hours to actually do the work? And if I don't, do I have enough money to maybe outsource it, etc.? So like, I would just take account of what are my resources. But then obviously we always talk about the quality of the message over quality of the production. So I would make sure that I nailed down my message, right? Like, who am I talking to? Specifically, what problem I'm solving, right? And nail it down. And we truly don't know whether your message is good or not until you put it out there and test it out into the world, right? Like talking to people that have those problems. Do they resonate? Do they convert into more conversations, right? That lead to more opportunities. So it's not about just sitting down and writing down like, yes, this is my message. You got to go and test it out, which is going to take resources. It's going to take time and money. All right. But those would be the first two things where I would start, right? Like, where am I going to put my resources? And obviously, like, what is it that I want to do? Right. Because based on your, Stephen Covey in the 7 habits of whatever the
highly
name of the book, highly effective people, that is the 7 habits of highly effective people. I think the last one, or maybe the first one, I don't even remember now. One of his habits is start with the end in mind. And that is such a good habit specifically for business too, which is, okay, what is the goal? Where do I want to go? And then you can break it down into smaller chunks, smaller goals, and you can move up from there, right? So I think that is a great spot to start. For example, when we started the podcast, we're like, okay, well, our goal is just to publish it, right? But we don't really have too much time to edit. We want to test the message. We have a message, but we want to test it out. We want to get more reps, and we have limited amount of time because we do have a service that we provide on the side that takes most of our time doing the fulfillment. Yeah. So what we did was, well, to get the message out consistently, we need to do it multiple times a week. And to avoid the whole production, we're just going to do it live, right? So pretty much we were dedicating 1 hour per episode, right? Maybe let's say hour and a half, 2 hours per episode. And we're doing it 3 times a week. If we would have only focused on one super high quality episode at the moment, where we wouldn't, first we would have less opportunity to test our message. And second, we would invest a lot of our time just into one episode that, again, our message wasn't tested. We didn't know if it was going to resonate and whatnot. So, I think that was our approach on, having an end in mind and then starting that way. And then eventually, as the podcast grew, we managed to increase resources, and now we can drop them back into the podcast and have a better product. And
one question I would urge you to ask yourself is, like, do you enjoy the idea of creating the way that you want to create, right? It's like the process. We have this story where we had this old business. It was a screen printing business. And we had this machine in the garage of our house. We're in Florida, right? So super hot in the afternoons. And we thought of the idea of owning a t-shirt company as a very fun idea with events and do this. And the second we started selling bigger orders, like 300 shirts that we had to print, the process became a nightmare, right? We hated every second of it, of, created this, the screens. And then because we're using a certain type of ink, it would dry up and then they will stick and we had to redo the whole process. So just a run would take us a bunch of hours and we were sleep deprived, fighting with our roommates, all these things. And then we decided to stop that business because we didn't enjoy the process. So I see that same thing with a lot of creators, and you see like these cases on YouTube where you have creators that have been creating this very specific type of content because maybe that's what resonated with an audience that they thought, they were serving at a point, right? And they kept reacting to what their audience wanted, and then they end up creating this flow that they don't really enjoy, and then they get to burnout, for example, right? So are you truly enjoying it? Like, are the people in your company enjoying the creation process, right? Do they really want to go into a YouTube heavy video production type, or do they enjoy more conversational content where they can sit down and talk with leaders in the world, whatever, right? Whatever that is, do you actually enjoy it? Because that's going to help you stay consistent for a longer period of time. We enjoy this time together. We enjoy bringing guests into our show, right? It fills up with energy, and that's what we do it. I think that's one of the main reasons of what being able to keep the consistency going. Once you have that base, once you continue to work on your message, then you can start adding these pieces on production wise. Like, okay, how can we get better footage? How can we look better? How can we maybe do an edit that serves the message, right?
Yep.
How can we hire a production manager that can help us out, right? And we start asking all these questions. And again, if you want to start from scratch, like some companies do, with a higher production value, because that's their belief, and maybe they have to maintain that level of quality at some point, then consider that it might be a steeper learning curve, right? Or it might be a bigger investment in the team that's going to get you there, right? And I think that's where I always recommend, start creating organically, yourself, and see if that's a format that you really like to do. And, with our cousin, shout out to Victor, for example, like he's documenting a lot of his, day to day, because he's already working out. He's already doing these things. So in his main social media platform, he's documenting these things live, and puts content out there. People are having conversations with him. And then this is encouraging him to continue to create, just like this podcast did for us. So I think those elements are super important for you to, take account. And
I think it's very easy to get distracted too with the technical aspects of things, right? Like his question was like, all right, like I'm creating this type of content. How do I turn it into vertical and all this stuff? And I mean, depending on the type of person that you are, right? But I know personally that for me, those technical challenges then become into rabbit holes, would then become into distractions. So I would go and be like, all right, how do I turn this into this? Oh, I need a video editing software. Let me go. Oh, I downloaded the video editing software. Let me learn every single aspect of it that I'm never going to use, but I still need to know how it works. Right? And I go on a different rabbit hole. And it's like, oh, let me make cinematic movies, whatever, all these things, right? And at the end of the day, it's just distractions that are taking you farther away from your original goal. So keep that in mind. If you're that type of person that does that, right? And again, there's nothing wrong on learning new skills, nothing wrong on trying to attempt to do the things by yourself, right? But keep in mind, maybe ask yourself, is this the best use of my time, right?
Yeah.
Because if not, it might be just better to, at the lowest level, go on Fiverr or Upwork and hire somebody to do that one specific task for you, so you can put your attention into what's going to yield the highest results, right? So, for example, in retrospect, maybe for us, where we yield the highest, source of value from our podcast is investing our time into inviting new guests, right, of the right caliber into Content is Profit, right, rather than let's spend our time multi-purposing the content, right? Like for that, we have a team that is doing that aspect, which is important, right, because it's distribution. But for us, it's more important building the relationships that we're going to bring into the podcast. So guess what? Sometimes you're going to have to choose. Sometimes you're going to have to decide whether do I really need these clips, or do I, invest into meeting people and bringing them into the show, and maybe again, every case is different. But for you, depending on what your priorities are, what your goal is, what yields the most value, it might be bringing new people, right? Connecting with people, or for you, it might just be, distributing the content in multiple channels. So again, get clear on what is your goal, what you're going to do. And then based on that, you can backtrack and see what are your priorities, right? You need to prioritize, specific actions so you can get where you want it to be. And I think it's very easy to get lost again on, I need to post all this content and multi-purpose my content and do X, Y, and Z, just because a lot of big people with big names with very successful platforms are doing it that way. But guess what? There's not one way to do certain things, right? I remember growing up, or that used to say all the time, like, all paths lead to Rome. That was like a saying that he would say all the time. And, looking back into it, like, it's the same thing. Like Rome is the goal. Like that's where we're going, but there's no one single path to do so, right? Like there's people that grow podcasts through, BOPA, borrowing other people's audiences, or there's people that grow their podcast through advertising, or there's people that grow it organically. There's many different ways to achieve one single goal. So again, taking care of your, taking into consideration your resources that you have at hand, the goal, that place where you want to be, and obviously you as a creator, how you like to create and do things, then you can pick the right path for you. And at the end of the day, you do need to stay consistent with what you do, at least long enough to have tangible results that can let you decide whether, yes, I want to go and follow in this path, right? I'm going to keep going, is offering steady growth. Or if it's not growing, you can pivot and say, okay, I'm going to do plan B, right? I have this hypothesis that if I do X, Y, and Z, is going to yield these results. And then you go and try that until you have measurable results, and then can form another decision.
Yeah, I think a good way to look at it is imagine it's a science experiment, right? You have the hypothesis that you think is going to be true, test it out for a fixed period of time, and then you decide it's a good thing to continue or not and move things forward. And then, as we wrap up, we are going to answer Victor's question on how to turn the horizontal video.
We're just gonna send them this clip
into short form, right? So, his original question is like, how do I do to turn a video that I originally recorded for YouTube that's horizontal into vertical, and so we can put it on reels or in shorts and different things like that. So, with that said, there's a few applications that you can do. So, a lot of obviously any editing software you can change the format of the video itself, but like Fonzie said, there's a learning curve for each one of them. One that we use that I personally love because I'm not that technical, it's called Descript. We're gonna put the link right below. Fonzie, obviously any Adobe product can do it. There's also our partner company Capsho, which just released a clipping feature, which you literally put the video file in there, and on top of giving you a lot of copy for like your podcast description or your YouTube video description and social media posts and different things. It extracts some video clips from it, and it gives you headlines and captions as well. It's actually amazing what they're able to do. And obviously if you Google how to multi-purpose or, do content online that way, there's going to be 1,000 companies that have popped up with this new AI that can do something similar. But on our specific case, we do that as a service, a little bit to, high-end podcast, but we're happy to help you in part of the process. If you want to learn it, just send us a quick message and we're happy to hop on a call with you and kind of walk you through our process. Is what we've done the last 5 years. So the second question that he answered is there an app on the iPhone? So this is, I think, a very good question because a lot of people might not have a higher quality camera or maybe even a laptop, right? To like that can process that amount of footage. But these little machines that we have here have incredible quality when it comes to video, audio, and different things. There's an application that I personally love. It's called Captions that can do something very similar. And on top of that, it facilitates the way that you can edit those social clips, right? You can add different formats. To a point that they have, I think, a feature that does a very highly edited production value like clip. And when I sent it to Fonzie, it's like, man, this is pretty impressive that a machine can do this automatically. But then there's also,
did you send me that?
Yeah, I did. You were like, you mentioned the name of an effect that I didn't really know what it was. You're like, oh, it's crazy that it can do that effect. But there's another editing tool that I personally don't use, but I've seen it all around social media. It's called CapCut, which is an editor that was born for your phones. But again, like everything is gonna have a learning curve if you haven't experienced anything like this. So our advice, if this is the first time of you turning long form content into short form, identify a few ideas. From those ideas, which are the message that resonate, then you can use either Capsho, which we're going to leave the links right below, or Descript if you want to process it that way. And put those clips out there, put the talking head with some subtitles that you like and see what happens. Are people reacting to it? Is it a polarizing idea? Is it not a polarizing idea? Are you enjoying the process of learning and improving every single time? And let us know what happens.
Yeah, let us know.
Why not?
Sure. I have beef with that, but yeah. We already talked about that in different contents, structure. There's multiple things that I don't, again, I would go back and look at what are your goals? Where is your attention and efforts best placed at? and then go from there. You know, like I would actually challenge you with a question. Are you just multi-purposing content just because other podcasts are multi-purposing content, right? Again, if the answer is yes, ask yourself, well, why? Why do I need to do it that way? Right? There's different paths to the same goal that you can take, and depends on your resources. It's probably going to be a little bit different.
Awesome. All right. With that said, guys,
yeah.
thank you so much for tuning to the Contents Profit Podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platform and on social media at Base Bros Co.
That is right. In today's episode to help you move one step closer towards your goal. Please don't forget to share this episode. And of course, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. See ya.
Bye, guys.